Welcome to 40 Fit Radio, where we bring you science-based, common sense information regarding fitness, health, and lifestyle for the 40-plus community. I'm your host, Darin, Doctor of Physical Therapy with 28 years clinical practice experience, starting strength coach, and certified CrossFit trainer. Forty Fit Radio, real people, real fitness, real health. Welcome back to the 40 Fit Radio podcast. I'm your host, Coach D, and today we are transmitting live from Lake City, Colorado, elevation 8,671 feet. And you'll have to forgive us on the quality of the podcast today if it's a little less than our normal quality, because today we're using one mic as we're recording remote. And I am here with my father-in-law today as our special guest, Lon Wimberly, and we're going to talk a little bit about his fitness, about his life's work, and he also might have some stories about me that I don't want him to share. But we're going to talk to Lon today, and the reason why we're here in Lake City, Colorado is that my middle daughter, Madeline Deaton, wedding ceremony here, and she was married to Hunter Hazen, so now she's Mrs. Hazen. Wedding went great. It was a beautiful ceremony out on the second largest lake, private second largest natural lake in Colorado, Lake San Cristobal. It was a beautiful setting. I think the weather was about 65 degrees, clear, and just what a gorgeous night and a great event. So we're here podcasting live in our cabin up here in Lake City, and I'd like to welcome Lon to the podcast. Welcome. Good to have you, Lon.
Thank you, Darin. Glad to be here.
Great. So we're going to talk to Lon a little bit. He's probably got some great stories on me that I don't want him to share, so we'll try to cut him off whenever possible. And but we've been we've been friends and son-in-law and father-in-law now for 28, almost 28 and a half years, but I've known him for right around 32 years. When I first met his oldest daughter, Michelle Wimberly, and let's talk about that first occasion. You want to tell them what happened on that first date? Do you remember what happened when I came to meet you?
Yeah, I remember very well, Darin. We sat down and you wanted to converse. We did. Got a little silent, and I think Darin says I dozed off, and I probably did. He was so dull that, I would not have done that with a person that's interesting, but Darin was so dull, I dozed off.
That is a true story, guys. We were sitting there talking, and I think we went out late that evening. We went out with some friends, and we were just going to get some ice cream and then maybe see a late movie or something. And it was, of all things, I took her out on a triple date, which was, I should have never done that. But I think it was almost maybe like 9:30 or 10 o'clock at night, and I looked over, and I think you were getting ready probably to watch the evening news, and he kind of snoozed off there, and boy, I was really interesting, obviously, extremely interesting. But
interesting thing is that now he is doing the same thing.
That is absolutely not true at all. But so let's talk a little bit. So Lon is one of those guys that just is a very interesting person, and I always like to have interesting people on the podcast. And I also like to have people that have lived a very active lifestyle and represent the 40 Fit lifestyle and can give us some wisdom and some knowledge about how they've done that. And then also just interesting points about their life and their life's history. And so I'm going to let Lon share a little bit about his background, where he's from. He can talk a little bit about his childhood and information like that. But my kids love this guy. If you're around him, I've never met anyone who he thought was a stranger. We go out to eat, and he knows people all the time. People say the same thing about me now. That's a scary thing, that we'll go to a restaurant, and I'm the exact same way. But this guy's a great guy and has become a mentor and a friend, not just my father-in-law, but I've learned a lot from him too. So tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
And by the way, I'm not paying Darin, but I may have to now after these comments. I grew up in the South Plains of Texas, a little town called Muleshoe, Texas. I was there until I finished college. We were farmers and had to work, all my spare time basically was working on the farm. I didn't resent that. I rather enjoyed it. I was with my dad continually when he was out working. And when I went to school, especially in high school, I would arrange so I would have my study hall that we had back then, the last period of the day, so that I could then go home 9 miles out. And for the most part, I think all through high school, I had a little motor scooter I'd get on, head home, so that I could begin work. And we'd work until dark, and then call it a day. So that's pretty much the early part. Then I left, went to college, West Texas State University. That's now Texas, West Texas A&M at Canyon, Texas. And went through 4 years, majored in business management, and graduated from there. And it was there that I met my wife, Elaine Baxter, and a little interesting story there. I saw her, wanted to meet her, and my roommate said that he knew her roommate, or friend, I believe is a roommate, and he could introduce us. Well, about 2 weeks later, he still hadn't done that, so I grew tired of that, and I called her and told her who I was. She had indicated she didn't remember seeing me, and so in the process, I gave her references of girls that I had dated that she knew.
And I'll just tell you this too, guys. Elaine, my mother-in-law, has her own version of this story too. I wish she was here and she could tell that, but I'm going to let him finish this. But this may not be the full truth.
But it is. And she consented that she would date, go out on a date, and we did. And of course, the rest is history. And we've been married for 55 years and looking forward to another 55. So in order to do that, then Darin is telling me that I'm going to have to start working out harder, and I think he has plans for that.
Yes. So one of the things that a lot of people don't know about Lon when they meet him, because he doesn't really say a whole lot about it, but he's lived an extremely active lifestyle all of his life. Working in the farming industry as a kid, went to college. Right out of college, he went into the Army, and I'm going to let him tell a little bit about that, but he went into the Army and was a helicopter pilot. But he's always been the kind of person that's led an extremely active lifestyle. And not only that, but he's always exercised to some level on a daily basis. And I mean daily basis, and I'll tell you a story about that later. But he and I have been talking as he's been listening to our podcast. And we were talking the other day in the truck, and I just said, as you get older, we've talked about this on several occasions. I said, you really need to start lifting more weights. And I think we talked about that in the sense that a lot of people that are older, their lifestyle, they can't really wrap their head around that because their lifestyle was so active over the years and years past that their work was their exercise, or their work was the way that they kept fairly fit. And they ate good foods and they stayed away. They had a very active lifestyle. So there wasn't a whole lot of time to sit around and watch TV and do not much of anything. But today, those things have changed. And so I've been talking to him about the concept that as we age, you get weaker over time, that you lose muscle mass. And then no matter how active you are, whether you're playing golf or you walk or you do all these different things, but that's not really training. It is exercise, but it really doesn't necessarily it's not training in the sense that we're doing something to get a specific outcome. And for him, the outcome that we're looking for is to increase his muscle mass, to fight the aging concepts of sarcopenia and osteopenia and osteoporosis and hormone level drops and all these other things. And so he's acutely aware of that stuff. And we're going to start a barbell program soon with him. And maybe in a later episode, we'll chronicle his story and how he's done with that. And so we are working behind the scenes, he and I are, on figuring out where we're going to put equipment at his house and how he's going to do that. And I'm thoroughly excited about that because I think he's going to see a tremendous result from the training program. So, but let's go back to his life story and tell us a little bit about your career in the Army.
I was commissioned as I finished my degree at West Texas State as a second lieutenant, and then went to the military a few weeks or a few months later, 2 or 3 months later, reported in at my appointed time. And from there, I went from having been commissioned and going to the officer orientation basic, which was 9 weeks at Fort Benning, Georgia. I left there for an assignment at Fort Hood, Texas, awaiting the date for flight school. There several months, and then began flight school, and that process was approximately 8 months. You finish that with a little over 200 hours of flight time. From that, I was assigned then to Fort Benning, Georgia, where I joined a unit that was preparing to go to Vietnam. We were taking a new model to Vietnam. One company had left prior to us in September and gone to the northern part of Vietnam. I left with the unit in November and went to the southern third corps area in Vietnam with a UH-1 Delta model helicopter, as Bell helicopter. And having arrived there, our unit, due to lack of experience of our personnel, we were divided up amongst other units, and I went to the 118th Aviation Company of the 145th Aviation Battalion. I served there in that as a pilot. Also, I worked in operations. I assigned the missions out as they came in to the various platoons as one of my duties, in addition to flying. Did that through May of that year, from November to May. Wanted to change from a slick platoon, as we called them, to a gun platoon, and my company commander would not let me do that. I think largely due to my analysis as I look back on that, and as I realized then too. We had flown together quite a bit, and I think he kind of took a father-son view on it. And he, after I asked him about 3 times, he said, "No, I'm not ever going to let you go down there to the gun platoon." So I said, "Sir, would you let me transfer then to battalion headquarters to a vacancy there as in working in operations?" And he said, "Yes, I'll let you do that." So I did. Went to battalion operations, enjoyed that. Had a little operation we called Pathfinder, and I'd go out when we would go on missions. The battalion would go on a mission, lift mission, we called it, where they were going to do what we referred to as combat assault, going into the area. I'd go out and to the staging area, brief the troops on the aircraft were going to come in, how to divide up, get on the aircraft, and so forth. Then when that operation was over, I would often go out into the operation area and do the same thing, preparing to do the extraction. So I enjoyed that and finished out my service in Vietnam in November of 65, and then was assigned to Fort Walters, Texas, where I went through what's called an MOI, that's Military Order of Instruction. And then having finished that, I picked up 3 students, took them through their second half of their basic flight training, and as they got out, finished their training at Fort Walters, their next assignment was to go to Fort Rucker, Alabama. But we finished at the same time. I finished up my 3 years of service. They finished up their training. They departed one way, I went the other, and had gotten a job at Bell Helicopter as a production test pilot. So I left the service, and about 3 or 4 days later, reported in at Bell.
Yeah, so I'd just like to say here, because he didn't say a whole lot about this, but several years back, and I'm not going to say which birthday it was, because Lon's doesn't like to share his age very often. He says I'm at 59 and holding, right? Isn't that correct? Let's just say he's in between his 6th and 7th decade of life, but you wouldn't know it when you meet him, nor would you know it when you meet his lovely bride, Elaine. But several years back, and I can't remember which birthday it was for, but Michelle and I had a painting done for him, a vignette done for him. And we did it because we just wanted to honor his service and his life and the things that he's done for his country. He doesn't share this very often, but Lon has the Bronze Star. He has 1 air medal and then 18 oak clusters added to that air medal, which basically represents 18 air medals, right? And so those are air medals that are given for flying in combat or flying in military operations. And so for his birthday that year, we had a painting done by an artist. Actually, in coincidence, that artist is here in Lake City. His name is Russ Brown. Yeah, see, Lon's got a better memory than I do, but Russ Brown. And he did a wonderful painting of Lon. Lon likes to ride horses. We'll talk a little bit about that here in a few minutes. But did a painting of him on horseback. And then part of the painting had him in a helicopter in his military flight service. Another part of the painting was just a picture of him I believe, in one of his uniforms when he was in the Army. And I think there was a picture of you. I can't remember all of them. That's right. There were the military awards, which were painted on there too. And I believe you have that in your office still, in his office. But it was a really, really cool thing. But I think that it's important that we recognize those who have served or are serving. And that's a big part, I think, of who Lon is, because out of that military career and his helicopter training, he has really spent his life's work mostly in the aviation industry as a helicopter flight instructor and then also as a pilot, and a very decorated pilot. And I'll let him share a little bit about that. But so you went to work for Bell. And what year did you go to work for Bell? Was it 65 or 66?
1966.
All right. So tell us a little bit about your career there.
I joined Bell from the military. May of 1966 as a production test pilot. We were flying primarily the Hueys, what people would know as a Huey. The model typically was a UH-1 Delta model. And then in the process of that, and I believe it was toward the end of the 67, the Cobras were introduced and started being manufactured and delivered to the service. And all of us dreamed of flying those, and then I did get to fly the Cobra quite a bit. We started flying them in production flight tests, and one of the assignments that we did would be somewhere in the process, take the aircraft down to Fort Hood and fire the guns, so that was always fun. Flew the other various models of Bell, including, of course, the basic Model 47, several different versions of that, but the bubble job, as people would call it, like I say, the Huey, the Cobra, the Jet Ranger, those were the primary aircraft during that period of time. I flew 2.5 years production, moved to the experimental department, and enjoyed that. I had flew lots of different aircraft and was involved directly in the certification process of the Model 212. That was Bell's first twin-engine aircraft, and rather enjoyed that.
So how many years in total did you work with Bell?
I was at Bell a total of 32 years. I had a break in there during the flying experimental. I had also purchased a business that I ended up finally, after running that for a year, I said running, I had a manager that was taking care of it, and I would come in each day and, of course, see what had been done and give guidance, direction. But I ran that. Finally, after a year, my manager was hired by one of my suppliers, so I in the process of looking for a new manager, finally realized I just needed to leave aviation and run the business. I did that and ran the business for a total of 14 years, including that year that I was an absentee, I guess you'd say, manager. And then at the end of that time, I had sold the business, planning to go in something else when I was contacted and see if I'd like to spend about 6 months with Bell in the instruction department, at the end of which time, the contract would be up. In the process, I decided to apply for the job. I did, was told I had the job, and then I reported back in 13 years to the day that I'd left Bell. And then that 6 months turned into being 22 years, so or 23, I guess. So a total of 32 years at Bell Helicopter.
And then you retired from Bell, and we'll talk a little bit about what happened after retirement, because Lon still actively flies. He owns a flight safety training company. It's called Flight Safety Training, FST, correct? Helicopter Safety Training, HST. And he flies, he does recurrency training and flight training for individuals both in the private sector, the commercial sector, and the governmental sector still. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But one of the things I've always found extremely interesting about Lon is his exercise routine. So I'll just tell you this, he eats really well. He eats a whole foods diet, and he and I over the years have talked about healthy eating and getting protein, and he specifically changed a lot of his health habits over the years because of conversations we've had, and then also Elaine reads copious amounts of information and is really learned and on top of health issues. And I think that's an important part of living a healthy, active, aging life, is to be educated and to be aware and to seek out resources like this podcast and other resources. But Lon also has an exercise routine, and we're going to add barbell training to that routine soon. But I'd like for him to share a little bit about what he does every single day. Now, guys, I mean every single day. And so this is his daily routine every day. And so for you guys who say, I can't exercise or I can't do this, then just take a listen to this.
And before I go into that, I will say that while I was at Bell, I got into the building business. Or actually, when I was away from Bell for those years, started building, remodeling, and then when I went back to Bell, I kind of put that behind me until Michelle and Darin wanted a new house, and I made a comment that I could build that for them, and they took me up that serious a few days later and said, let's build the house. So I did that and rather enjoyed, the building, and then went back to Bell, kind of pushed that aside, and then got, I guess, when I built their house, actually, it's when I got really active again and continued building even after I'd gone back to Bell. So my days were long. I would leave Bell and go out to look at the job or jobs. I've had sometimes as many as 7 or 8 jobs going at one time. Go back home and then call the subs and tell them, the things that I needed done that I had found as I made my inspections. So anyway, just to throw that in. My exercise routine, I recall that several years back, I had fallen, and I believe off of a ladder, going up to put something on a shelf a little high in the garage, and kind of hurt myself back. Darin came over and actually carried me upstairs to a bedroom, and in the process, he said, "Boy, you're a little pudgy." And
I don't know if I actually called him pudgy, but hey, I had to carry the guy upstairs,
So anyway,
that's been a long time ago. That's been
a while back, and I have always been able to do push-ups, and so 20 were no big deal, and I decided I need to get back into exercising, and I started that a little more seriously, and at one point, probably not with the correct form, but I'd got up to doing about 300 a day. I started out, and I will do 300 per day. And I would do it in 20 reps at a time, and then I'd go to 30 reps at a time, gets you a little faster. Built that on up, until I passed 100. Once I passed 100, then it seemed like the going was easy, so I could keep pushing up. Finally went to 300 without stopping. Like I say, probably not the correct form. Then, but I've always done that, and I currently I do 200 per day, but I do them in 50 reps each time. So within the first 30 minutes of getting up in the morning, I'll knock those out. And a few other things I'll do along with that, but that's the primary.
Right. You've used the dumbbells. You do some dumbbell lifts, some shoulder lifts, and you do some squats. And I know you used to do a lot of active walking. You did not speed walking, but it wasn't necessarily a casual walk. But for a while there, you were walking 2 or 3 miles a day or something like that, correct?
Well, at one time, I think our last real out walking and running, jogging, about 4 years ago here at Lake City, actually. Darin and Michelle came up. Elaine and I were here, and we got out and ran, about 4 miles that day, which surprised me, I think, because the altitude, one thing, but was able to make the run with Darin and really enjoyed that. But the walking and running had to kind of go to the wayside because I stay rather busy when I'm not traveling with my other activities around my home, and so I'm always building something or doing. And sometimes I'll buy property and rehab it and sell it. So staying busy with activities.
Yeah. So one thing you'll definitely find about Lon is he'll work most men half of his age or the quarter of his age under the table. I just think it's part of his lifestyle. It's been part of his entire life. And I've always used that as a gauge as to how hard I should work too. And it's been a great example for me as a younger man. And as I've gotten into my 5th decade, which he razzes me about a lot, because I think when I met Michelle, he was in his mid-40s, and I thought he was old then. Now we both realize that's not old. But it's just crazy how life changes and how you age. But he's always lived a very active lifestyle. He's always been very fit. And the one thing you'll notice about him is, and how tall are you, Lon? You're about how tall?
Well, it was 5'10", but I think I've shrunk a little bit now.
It's probably about 5'9". What do you weigh?
160.
5'9", 160. And I guarantee you he's stronger than most men, like I said, half his age. I've watched him work. We've worked on horses together. We've moved round bales of hay that were 1,000 pounds together, lifted trailers. This weekend, we moved 2 boulders, and he just helped us out in the front yard today. 2 of these boulders, I bet one was probably 450, 500 pounds. The other was probably 600 pounds. Very, very heavy. And he just got right in there with me and another guy, and we moved that boulder, and I'm glad we left. But he's always lived a very active lifestyle, and we've talked about that. And I think that's something that's very important to him. Because we all recognize as we age that we are generally going to be able to do less over time. But the goal is to reduce that level of loss of function slowly and make that curve very, very slow so that we can be able to do more than most people our age. And I will tell you that when you look at his peers or his cohorts, I don't know any man his age that can hold a candle to his abilities. So let's talk a little bit about you have your helicopter safety training company. So when he retired at Bell, the idea was, and I remember him and I talking about this, that he was just going to stop flying. But he and I talked about it a little bit, and I think I did basically say, hey, I think you need to continue to fly. You need to continue to do this. You're too good at it. people like you too much. He had some very influential clients that he would do like recurrency training or updated training with. And he was just very good at it. And I said, I think these people will want to continue to fly with you. So tell us a little bit about that transition and give us a little short snippet about what you do today, because you still own a company and you're very active with that.
Well, first, Darin probably overstated most of that, but when I did retire from Bell, I didn't exactly have the plan to do what I'm doing today. I thought it might be interesting to do training, just same as Bell Helicopter. 4 of us retired at the same time, and 3 of us actually got together, kind of talked about doing that, and just never did really get it off the ground, or one of the guys that was going to never did get off the ground. And a few months later, I having done a little training for someone else that had retired a few years earlier and was in the business really of moving aircraft from to customers from Bell or whatever the need was, ferrying them around the world. Occasionally he'd run into those that wanted a little training, and as he would put it, he would do the best he could at training. But he started calling me, and I did a little training, a couple of different training sessions for customers for him, and then decided, well, maybe I should go into business. In October, having left Bell at the end of March, I started my business, Helicopter Safety Training LLC, and that has been a real blessing. I have had the privilege of having obtained several customers that I had been being sent to for Bell Helicopter, that when I started my operation, of course I had a track record with those customers, and they chose to have me continue doing their training. Key to all that is the recognition by the insurance underwriters, and all the underwriters ended up approving my training to be equivalent to Bell Helicopter. So I offer the training, and basically Bell is a large part of that business is refresher training, which most insurance companies require people that they insure, that they have their pilots go through recurrent training, refresher training, once a year. Sometimes they'll slide that to once every 2 years. But so I have regular customers that and that keeps being more customers that go along, that I'll go to and do their recurrency or refresher training. Also along the way, too, customers buy a different model of the Bell Helicopter aircraft, and I'll transition those into that model. I do the flying. I have pilots, retired pilot instructors that were at Bell Helicopter that will do the ground school training for me, because I choose to do only the flying myself and have them do the ground school. So stayed rather busy with that, and very blessed to have the customers I have.
Yeah, he's extremely busy. I don't know how many days a month you fly. Do you have an estimate of how many days a month you normally fly? I mean, I know you have a busier season sometimes a year than the other, but out of choice.
It varies. So a typical trip will be a 1 week out, and some of them are occasionally shorter than that. I've had so far this year 13 trips, and I have several on the books coming up for the remainder of the year. And the good part of that, too, I have time in between, so I'll have time to be home, catch up, and be gone again.
So I know you don't have to work, because you've been a good steward, a good financial steward, but you've chosen to work, and that means you're working a couple weeks a month, but you're living an active working lifestyle, which is great. And you and I have talked about this. You'll never stop working. You'll always work at something, and that's just our mindset. And I think that's a great mindset, but you figured out a way to not only do something that you love and continue to do that, but also enjoy the other things that you like to do. And that kind of brings us to, well, let's talk about this first. So You've got some really cool clients. I mean, you've got some clients like Bill Galt of the Galt Ranch, a very large ranch up in Montana.
In White Sulphur Springs, Montana, Bill was a Bell helicopter customer coming in training academy. I had not met him. I knew he was a rancher, and my interest is in that area. And finally, we had the opportunity to meet probably a year before I left Bell. Bill invited me to come to his ranch. He has a very small ranch, 100,000 acres, and so it's in White Sulphur Springs. I started making the trip really as a friend, and then along the way, I began flying with him, and then I'm the training that he. Yeah, in other words, I take care of all of his training now. And I'll fly not only with Bill, but his son and his nephew that manages the ranch, and another one of his ranch hands that he would like to keep around forever. So I fly at least 4 people there. So enjoyable. I've had the opportunity to meet, through flying, a lot of people that I consider friends. I consider Harrison Ford as a friend and visit with him occasionally when I go to California. Vince Gilligan, who is a producer that writes a show called Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. Vince is a customer, and I'd like to say friend, as I've been flying with him now for probably about 3 years, and sometimes twice a year. And a good friend of mine, Steve Safford, who has a company called Studio Wings. He actually flies Vince's what we call Bell Eagle 212 single. It's a 212 that's been modified to single engine configuration, and Vince bought one that Steve flies it in movies. Steve Stafford's entire career has been in the movie business. I think his mother was an actress, and in fact, he had shown me a picture of his mother with John Wayne in something they'd done together. But Steve has been a cameraman, a producer. He was actually the cameraman 6 days, 7 nights with Harrison Ford, aviation manager for that movie, as well as other lots of flying. He does both airplane and helicopter flying. And so I met Steve when he came in with Harrison Ford, and we became fast friends, and we visit often by way of phone or whatever. And then when Vince bought the aircraft that Steve was teaching Vince to fly, then I started training them in that model and continue to do so today. So it's an interesting occupation because there are a lot of folks out there that get to meet, and they're great people.
Yeah, it's a really cool thing. We talk all the time about new people you've met, whether it be in the private industry or in the commercial sector. And let's face it, if you own a helicopter, you're doing okay if you're in the private sector. So,
and the Bill Galt, I didn't mention on that friendship. I go to Bill's place twice a year. I do it at my timing, and I do that because I want to go out for branding. So I'll go out and we'll do branding in late May. We'll do shipping of the cattle in September, and so Bill let me know, when those activities are. So I enjoy that, and actually just earlier this year we got a new horse from the ranch arrived my place to go along with my other 2 horses. So I've got to stay healthy because I now have 3 horses to keep exercised, and I really enjoy riding.
Over the years, Lon and I used to ride together a lot more, and we're hopefully going to start riding some more together. But we used to ride together and did a little pinning and mostly just recreational riding, ranch riding. We've been to brandings together and done calf roping together, and so I think now growing up in the farming industry and in West Texas, and in kind of the farming, ranching kind of communities, kind of returned back to his roots. I don't think he ever left. He just has more time to do it now. Most guys his age would not even be thinking about buying horses or getting on the back of a horse, but he got his new colt that arrived, and got on the back of that colt for the first time and rode him around his place. And so we hope to do a lot of riding together. And that's one of your interests, that you love the farming and ranching industry, and specifically horsemanship. I know you've been to some clinics and to learn more about how to be a better horseman. And I think we're both a study of the quality of horsemanship and riding and just enjoying being on the back of a horse is a lot of fun.
Got to stay young. I'm with my new horse, which had been a trainer before I rode him, but I want to probably send him for some specialty training. I'd like to get involved in one, maybe three different possibilities. One is ranch horse versatility. One might be pinning. Another might be sorting. So some things I want to do still in life before I sit down. So got to stay healthy, keep going.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And so he doesn't let a whole lot of dust grow under his feet. And let's talk a little bit about this. I'd like to talk a little bit about seeing your granddaughter's wedding today. You know, you've obviously had a daughter that's been married. You have two daughters, Shauna and Michelle. Michelle's the oldest. But you got to see your granddaughter get married yesterday here in Colorado. What'd you think about that?
Very interesting. When Maddie announced that she wanted to be married at Lake City, Colorado, we first, the way we visualized that, it'd probably be a very small wedding. Who would travel all the way up to Lake City for the wedding? And now Maddie, in her degree in college, when she graduated, she was hospitality management, and she actually went to work for a wedding place that she basically managed the weddings. So we kind of anticipated she'd have a big, city wedding, so to speak. But she said, I don't want all that. I just want a simple wedding and want to go to Lake City. We did do that, and I will say that's the most interesting wedding I have ever been seen or been a part of. We have had 3 days of activities here. Thursday night was a reception here at the Deaton cabin. Probably 40, 50 people came. Friday night was a rehearsal dinner that everyone that was in town for the wedding was invited to, and we had a great time. And of course, in the process of all this, we're getting to see people and meet people that we might have known, may not have known, meeting new people. And then Saturday night after the wedding, we had the reception. So again, we're together. So 3 events. Now the wedding itself was just unbelievable. Had that out on a vacant piece of property by the lake San Cristobal, and you could see right out in the background behind the bride and groom and preacher, the lake and the mountains that rise up from the lake, and trees, beautiful. The rain, it was raining some almost up to wedding time. Just little showers come through. And, of course, our prayer was that rain would stop and we'd have a good, bright sunshine. And guess what? That's what happened. The rain stopped, had a beautiful time for the wedding. After the wedding, the reception, which was an outdoor affair also, and it couldn't have been a better plan. So really a great time of meeting people and renewing friendships and so forth, and then seeing this couple married and out on the way. They do have a great honeymoon trip that all the family, the Deatons and the newlyweds, are going to Ireland. And they'll be leaving here tomorrow, basically making their way that way. And I think they'll arrive there about Wednesday in Ireland. So anyway, that's just what's happening right now.
Yeah, so the wedding event was amazing, and like Lon said, the weather was incredible. We had great weather. We had a little bit of rain, but it wasn't too bad. But do you like the new grandson-in-law? What do you think about the guy?
I think Maddie could not have chosen anyone, a better person. We have just really come to love Hunter And by the way, his name is Hunter because his dad is a hunter and a fisherman, and he named his two sons, one of them Hunter and one of them Fisher. So I think Darin's going to have to get out and do some hunting, as he does anyway, and loves to do that. I'm sure that he'll have a grandson, son-in-law now, right along with him. But excellent family, good Christian family. You couldn't have asked for, couldn't have described a better person for Maddie to marry.
I would agree that Hunter's a great kid and or young man and come to love him and just being able to watch him as her boyfriend and then also as her fiance, and then also he worked for me for a short period of time recently and just did a great job. Just a very good young man of character and values, and he's going to make a great husband, a great life partner for Maddie. So let's talk real quickly. I know there's some things that are really important to you in life, so I'd like for you to kind of give us some things that are really important to you, whatever those things are. It might be the hard work that you do. It might be your health. We've talked about that a little bit. It might be the values that you have. But I'd like for you to give the audience and the listeners a little bit of wisdom, because I think you've got a lot of it. This is a guy that most guys could do well if they could live up to half of the things that Lon has done and the values that he has and the character. I'll tell you, in 32 years of knowing this man, I've never seen him lie or do something distrustful or do something to slight others. I just don't think you were raised that way. Tell us a little bit about that part of you, and we'd like to hear that.
Well, I don't know where to start, except I guess the thing I would say, number one, I think our Christian faith is of utmost importance. And, of course, that's a beginning in my relationship with Jesus Christ. Family is very important to me, and I've been fortunate to have Christian parents. My father passed away in 1999. My mother is, of course, still surviving that. She was 8 years younger than my dad, but she is now she'll be 100 coming up in February if she makes that, and we're looking forward to that probability. But family, relations, friends, I don't know exactly how to categorize all that, but very important. I think utmost importance in all your dealings, be honest, be fair, do what you say you're going to do, and always be consistent. We taught our daughters if they committed to do something, they had to follow through with it. We would not allow them to stop because it got a little hard, a little rough. We said, if you said you're going to do it, then you've got to see it through. So I think that's very important, that we do what we say and we are what we know we should be and be consistent.
Yeah, excellent. And I think you live out all those values. And so I've really enjoyed having you. I'm looking forward to getting started doing some barbell training with you. We've already been talking. He said we were driving. Was it the day before the ceremony? We were setting stuff up and we were talking and driving around and doing things, and we always talk about health and fitness and his health and what he's doing and how, and he'll ask me questions, and we just kind of small talk as we're driving along in the truck, and I started talking more about the importance of weightlifting with him, which he knows. He's listened to the podcast and also knows about my gym background and my background, and because we've been I've known him more of my life than I have less of my life. So, we started talking about barbell training, and I told him what I thought he might need equipment wise for his home, because he's going to do it in his home. And the next thing I heard out of his mouth was, order the stuff. And so we're working on that right now, and we're working out the details of getting him a rack and getting him a barbell, and then getting some coaching and training from me and my other intern coach, Trent Jones, who's our podcast producer. And I think he's going to do a great job. And we talked about the concepts of that you don't have to be scared of the barbell, no matter your age, that anyone can do it, and that sometimes it has a stigma, but you start out small and it's a linear progression over time, and we gradually build strength over time, which he understands all those things because it relates to technique in flying and expertise in his career and all those other things. So looking forward to that, and we'll do a follow-up podcast with Lon and visit with him again so that he can tell us how his experience is going and how he's feeling. So would you like to add anything to this, Lon?
That follow-up is based on the success. If I fail, then probably won't be a follow-up.
He's going to be successful. I can tell you that. I haven't seen this man fail in very little. When he puts his mind to it, he's going to do it. And I think he's going to do great in barbell training. So thank you for being on this podcast, Lon. And thank you for listening, audience. And remember, you can find us on the Instagrams at 40 Fit Radio, and I'm also on Instagram at DL Deaton. You can also find us at the Facebook group, 40 Fit Community Group on Facebook, and then you can also go to 40fit.com, and we just launched our new website. It looks great. We're still tweaking some things, but it's got information about 40 Fit. It's got information about the podcast, also about our gym in Texas where we do training, and more information about things to come. So great to have you on the 40 Fit podcast today, and listen up to the next podcast, and we look forward to seeing everybody. Thank you.